All right, some calm has been restored to Phoenix, north of Durban, where racial tensions erupted during the unrest last week. At least 20 people were killed, most of them black. People in the area described gunshots, dead bodies and cars being torched. After the looting, there were attacks in homes and businesses, and residents in Phoenix set up barricades at almost every intersection. Indian residents often pitted against their African neighbours living in the informal settlements of Bhambayi, Zwelish and Amaoti. Well, a social scientist says the tensions in KwaZulu-Natal pose a threat to South Africa's very democracy, and they stem from issues that have never been resolved post-apartheid. Dr. Rama Naidu is the director of 6 Degree Shift. He joins us now. Doctor, thank you. Firstly, it does seem like some calm has been restored in Phoenix. There's a security presence, or there was, and some community engagement, it seems, to bring people together. Do you think a race war in that area was actually a possibility? And has that now been averted?
I think a race war seemed a possibility a couple of days ago, most certainly, as tensions began to arise. But now, as calm seems to be restored, sanity seems to prevail again, and people have realized the situation exactly what it is. And as I said earlier on, it's not unusual that these tensions arise each time we have a conflict like this one, because we still have not addressed the real issues of the haves and have-nots and the legacy of the social separation of people. So in a case where people are a minority group, as the Indians are, it's very easy to create a situation where instigators or people who have, I think, irresponsibly start to put out rumors on air that instill and fan the flames of fear amongst people who are already in a fearful state. In the case of South Africa. And this would happen in this particular context because people were seeing visuals on SABC News kept reinforcing the message: the police are not coming, the army is not coming. And when you add to that the stories of mobs appearing close to the township, it fueled the sense of we better stand up and do something. And what started off as let's first protect ourselves overflowed into anger and resentment and someone to lash out at. And so the mob mentality became very real. And I think what happened in that moment, when that starts to arise, people lose sense of rational thinking and want to find someone to blame for it. And so innocent people were beaten up in some cases, and this sowed the fear even more amongst residents. But I must add that despite this, on the social media that I've been monitoring, the voice of reason and telling people again not to do that, not to be irresponsible, was much stronger than I've ever seen before. And I think this is a good sign of people saying, we're South African first. Yeah. And what does this mean when we put it against neighbours who are not exactly in the same situation that we are in?
I mean, the simmering tensions must still be there, right? What we saw last week, that sort of violence could presumably break out again. What should have happened? I mean, surely you shouldn't have, like you say, Indian people living together, black people living together, white people living together. We needed to integrate societies. Is that the main issue for you?
Well, it's a main issue because I'm not saying that the people of Umhlanga should now go and live in Amaoti. I'm saying that the separation has kept us apart from each other. It's sowed mistrust in each other. And so it's easy to find and name someone as the other. And once we start doing that, then we have a target to blame. We have someone that we can do something to, someone that we can malalign. And so it's not just about the fact that we need to be integrated. It's more the fact that we need to start talking to each other as South Africans, because we can no longer sit down and just say, let's have conventions and conferences and things about social cohesion if we're not willing to do the work. And there is no clear answer to that. But I do believe there's a sense right now in this country that something has to be different and a new story has to be written. The only way we can do that is to galvanize, mobilize this energy we have right now as communities all over KwaZulu-Natal to say, let's not lose this space, but let's meet our neighbors and start talking without any sense of an outcome, but just to connect to each other as South Africans, because we've seen such amazing goodwill of people coming together to say, this is our country. I've never seen that kind of thing before. So I think it's a moment in our history that's really special And it would be tragic if we simply felt, okay, now that the crisis is over, let's get back to our normal lives. I don't think any South African can ever do that now.
Well, I hope what you talk about happens, engagement at a community level. What about beyond that? You're very critical of government. You wrote that when people take to the streets and loot everything in plain sight of the law and nothing is done for 3 days, the message is clear. You say that the rule of law no longer applies and we're at war with ourselves. As a nation, why do you believe it took so long for police to get a handle on the situation?
Well, I think that's a question that's in everyone's thoughts right now. You know, SABC was there first, and they were bringing us the news live to say, look what's happening. This is where we are at right now as we speak. The cameras are rolling, and we were seeing that live and wondering where on earth were the police and the army? There's most certainly something that's going on in terms of their presence at this time that made people say, my goodness, if no one's here to protect us, as citizens of this country, then we better do that for ourselves. And that was the starting point of the mobilization. The barricades, the people coming together, and of course, coming with that, the sense of those people who went to the extreme ends to try to manifest that violence on people who might very well have been innocent, and even taking the law into their own hands. So most certainly, I think the sense that the slow response to it fueled the sense that we're on our own. And in that space, people have a couple of options. Either you flee out of fear or you stand. And it seems that people across this province stood together. And in the cleanup operation, I think for many people who stood maybe as a different racial group, we're now aware that actually there are many, many people of color, black people, who felt exactly the way they did about the sense of lawlessness. And I think that's the important point for us. So I think there's been a shift in the awareness, which is a good thing for democracy. But in terms of the state, I think the present state is in serious trouble with this because their response has been not good.
And you say the president has been seen as weak and ineffective. Before we go, what would you have liked to have seen from him?
Well, I think the president's response, I mean, first of all, I would like him to see him at least 2 or 3 times live on television, not keep us waiting in suspense for the 8:30 news to tell us what's happening, to be connected to the people. That was the first thing. And the second thing, I mean, we know now that there's something else happening, but that does not set aside the fact that despite this notion of some kind of conspiracy, the questions of equality, the questions of injustice of the have-nots has been an issue with the ANC for the last 25 years. And the party has been so busy worrying about its internal ructions and fighting amongst itself that they lost contact with the people. And they will pay the cost for that at the polls.
All right, a little bit later in the next hour, we'll be speaking to a former general, a former head of the SANDF who agrees with you. Thank you for your time tonight, Dr. Rama Naidu, Director of 6 Degree Shift.